The front kick to the face. The front kick to the face became legendary when Anderson Silva used it to silence Vitor Belfort at UFC 126, creating one of the most shocking moments in combat sports history. In that split second, Silva proved that traditional martial arts weren't just for movies, they could end careers. This devastating technique drives the ball of the foot straight into the opponent's face like a piston, generating power through explosive hip extension. When it connects cleanly, it's lights out instantly. Silva wasn't the only master of this technique. Lyoto Machida shocked the world when he front-kicked Randy Couture into unconsciousness at UFC 129, proving that karate could work at the highest level of MMA. The sound of that kick connecting still gives fans chills. What makes the front kick so brutal is its deceptive simplicity. It looks basic, but the timing required to catch someone moving forward is absolutely perfect. 1 millisecond off and you miss completely. The technique works because it uses the opponent's forward momentum against them. When someone rushes in and meets that front kick, it's like running into a steel beam. Collision effect multiplies the damage exponentially. Fighters like Stephen Thompson have also used this technique effectively, showing that the front kick transcends fighting styles. Whether you're a karate master or a kickboxer, this technique can end fights instantly. The power comes from driving off the back foot while snapping the hip forward, creating a whip-like motion that delivers devastating force. When executed perfectly, it's one of the most beautiful and terrifying techniques in combat sports. By the way, if you're enjoying this breakdown of knockout techniques, make sure to subscribe because I'm posting detailed MMA analysis like this every week. The psychological impact of a front kick is enormous. Opponents never see it coming, and when it does land, it sends a message that you can end the fight from anywhere at any time. The front kick represents everything beautiful about martial arts: simplicity, timing, and devastating effectiveness, all wrapped into one perfect technique. The overhand right. The overhand right is the people's knockout punch. Nobody threw it with more bad intentions than Chuck Liddell. When the Iceman cocked back that right hand, you knew someone was going to sleep. It was probably going to be violent. The looping punch travels over the opponent's guard like a sledgehammer, targeting the chin where dreams go to die. Liddell made this technique famous by knocking out legends like Tito Ortiz and Renato Sobral with picture-perfect overhand rights. Dan Henderson's version was even more terrifying. His H-bomb could knock out anyone at any time, regardless of size or skill level. When Henderson caught Michael Bisping with that overhand right at UFC 100, it was like watching a man get hit by a truck. The technique generates power through hip rotation and shoulder turn, with the punch traveling in a wide arc that builds momentum. And when it connects, the rotational force can literally shut off someone's consciousness instantly. What made fighters like Liddell and Henderson so dangerous was their ability to throw this punch while moving backward or to the side. They could catch you with the overhand right when you thought you were safe, turning defense into devastating offense. Roy Nelson was another master of this technique, using his overhand right to knock out heavyweights who outweighed him by 50 pounds. His knockout of Brendan Schaub showed that technique and timing could overcome any physical disadvantage. The overhand right works because it comes from an angle that's difficult to see and even harder to defend against. By the time you realize it's coming, it's already too late to get out of the way. The psychological warfare aspect of this punch is incredible. Once fighters establish their overhand right, opponents become hesitant to engage, knowing that one mistake could result in a highlight reel knockout. Fighters like Jeremy Stevens and Julian Lane have also scored spectacular knockouts with this technique, proving that the overhand right is truly the great equalizer in MMA. The beauty of the overhand right is its simplicity and effectiveness. It doesn't require years of training to understand, but it takes a lifetime to master the timing and power generation that makes it truly lethal. The high kick to the head. The high kick to the head is poetry in motion, and when Mirko Krokrap Filipovic threw his left high kick, it was like watching death itself take physical form. His kicks didn't just knock people out, they sent souls to another dimension. This technique uses the shin like a baseball bat, generating power through hip rotation and leg extension. When it connects with someone's head, the impact is so devastating that it can cause instant unconsciousness and sometimes permanent damage. Krokrop's left high kick was so feared that opponents would literally change their entire game plan just to avoid it. His knockout of Igor Vovchanchin was a work of art, a perfect demonstration of timing, power, and technique all coming together in one devastating moment. Edson Barboza brought a different flavor to the high kick, using his Muay Thai background to create some of the most spectacular knockouts in UFC history. His wheel kick knockout of Terry Etam was so perfect that it looked choreographed. The technique requires incredible flexibility and balance to execute properly. You're essentially throwing your leg at someone's head while maintaining perfect stability on one foot. It's a testament to human athleticism and years of dedicated training. Anthony Pettis showed that high kicks can come from anywhere when he knocked out Stephen Thompson with a perfectly timed head kick. The speed and precision required to land that technique against someone of Thompson's caliber was absolutely incredible. What makes the high kick so devastating is that it targets the head from an angle that's almost impossible to defend against. When someone's focused on punches and takedowns, that high kick comes out of nowhere like lightning. Fighters like Uriah Hall and Joaquim Silva have also scored incredible knockouts with high kicks, each bringing their own style and power to this devastating technique. The setup for a high kick often involves using lower attacks to get opponents comfortable, then exploding with the head kick when they least expect it. It's psychological warfare at its finest. The high kick represents the pinnacle of striking technique. It requires years of training, perfect timing, and the courage to throw your leg at someone's head knowing that if you miss, you're in serious trouble. The spinning heel kick. The spinning heel kick is the most dangerous technique in combat sports, and when Uriah Hall landed his on Adam Cella during The Ultimate Fighter, it's like watching someone get hit by a wrecking ball. The sound of that impact still haunts everyone who witnessed it. This technique requires you to turn your back on your opponent while spinning 360 degrees and striking with your heel. It's the ultimate high-risk, high-reward move that can either end the fight instantly or leave you completely vulnerable. Hall's spinning heel kick was so devastating that it left Cella unconscious and twitching on the canvas. The technique was executed with such precision and power that even Hall himself was shaken by what he'd done. Edson Barboza has also used spinning techniques effectively, showing that when these kicks land clean, they can change lives forever. His wheel kick knockout of Terry Etom demonstrated the devastating potential of spinning strikes. The power generated by a spinning heel kick comes from centrifugal force, your entire body weight rotating at high speed and transferring all that energy through your heel into your opponent's head. Physics at its most brutal. What makes this technique so terrifying is the heel itself. It's one of the hardest parts of the human body. When it's backed by full body rotation, it becomes a weapon capable of causing serious permanent damage. Fighters like Carlos Condit and Donald Cerrone have also scored knockouts with spinning techniques, each bringing their own style and timing to these devastating strikes. The psychological impact of spinning heel kick knockouts is enormous. They represent the absolute pinnacle of striking technique and athleticism, creating moments that fans remember forever. The technique requires years of practice to master the balance, timing, and spatial awareness needed to execute it under pressure. One mistake and you're on the ground with your opponent on top of you. The spinning heel kick is the ultimate expression of martial arts. It combines technique, timing, power, and courage into one perfect moment that can change everything in an instant. The flying knee. The flying knee is pure violence in motion. And when Jorge Masvidal launched himself at Ben Askren at UFC 239, he created the fastest knockout in UFC history and one of the most brutal moments ever captured on camera. This technique involves jumping forward while driving your knee upward, creating a collision that can literally end someone's career in 5 seconds. Masvidal's flying knee was so perfect that Askren was unconscious before he hit the ground. The beauty and terror of the flying knee is in its timing. Masvidal read Askren's takedown attempt perfectly and had the technique ready to counter it immediately. It was like watching a predator strike with perfect precision. Jose Aldo was another master of the flying knee, using it to devastating effect throughout his career. His ability to time this technique against opponents shooting for takedowns was absolutely incredible. The power generated by a flying knee comes from the momentum of the jump combined with the upward drive of the knee. When someone runs into it, the collision effect can cause catastrophic damage. What makes this technique so dangerous is that it targets the head from an upward angle that's almost impossible to defend against. When someone shoots for a takedown, their head is completely exposed to this devastating strike. Fighters like Anderson Silva and Yair Rodriguez have also scored spectacular knockouts with flying knees, each bringing their own timing and style to this devastating technique. The psychological impact of flying knee knockouts is enormous. They happen so fast that by the time you realize what happened, someone's already unconscious on the canvas. The technique requires incredible courage to attempt, as missing it leaves you in a terrible position. But when it lands clean, it's one of the most devastating strikes in all of combat sports. The flying knee represents everything that makes MMA beautiful and terrifying. Split-second timing, devastating power, and the ability to end fights in the blink of an eye. The Superman Punch. The Superman Punch is deception at its finest. When fighters like Anthony Pettis and George St. Pierre threw it, they turned trickery into art form. This technique's all about making your opponent think one thing is coming while delivering something completely different. The technique involves lifting your rear leg as if you're going to kick, then driving forward with a jumping punch while your leg is still chambered. It's like watching a magician perform the ultimate sleight of hand, except the result is someone getting knocked unconscious. GSP used the Superman Punch to perfection against Matt Hughes, showing that even the most experienced fighters could be fooled by this deceptive technique. The setup was so smooth that Hughes never saw it coming until it was too late. Anthony Pettis brought his own flavor to the Superman Punch, using his creativity and athleticism to make it look effortless. When he caught opponents with his technique, it was like watching poetry in motion. The power comes from the forward momentum of the jump combined with the element of surprise. Opponents react to the fake kick by adjusting their guard, creating the perfect opening for the punch to land clean. What makes this technique so effective is the psychological warfare involved. Once you establish a kicking game, opponents become conditioned to defend against leg attacks, making them vulnerable to the Superman punch deception. Fighters like Dan Henderson and Roy Nelson have also used variations of this technique, proving that the Superman punch works across all weight classes and fighting styles. The beauty of the Superman punch is that it combines athleticism with intelligence. You need the physical ability to execute the jump and punch, but also the fight IQ to set it up properly. The technique represents everything that makes MMA exciting: creativity, deception, and the ability to surprise opponents with techniques they've never seen before. When a Superman punch lands clean, it creates those highlight reel moments that fans remember forever, proving that sometimes the most spectacular techniques are also the most effective. The wheel kick. The wheel kick is the most spectacular knockout technique in MMA, and when Edson Barboza caught Terry Etim with his at UFC 142, he created one of the most beautiful and devastating moments in combat sports history. This technique involves spinning 360 degrees while throwing a high kick, using centrifugal force to generate power that can literally separate someone from their consciousness. When Barboza's kick connected with Etim's head, it was like watching lightning strike. The impact was so clean and devastating that Etim went completely stiff and fell backward like a tree being cut down. The technique was executed with such perfection that it looked like something out of a martial arts movie. Uriah Hall has also used spinning techniques to devastating effect, showing that when these kicks land clean, it can change the entire trajectory of a fight and a fighter's career. The wheel kick generates massive power through the rotation of the entire body. Every muscle, every ounce of momentum, everything comes together in that one perfect moment of impact. What makes this technique so dangerous is the heel or shin connecting with the opponent's head at maximum velocity. The rotational force combined with the hardness of the striking surface creates devastating results. Fighters like Carlos Condit and Donald Cerrone have also scored knockouts with spinning techniques, each bringing their own style and timing to these spectacular strikes. The psychological impact of wheel kick knockouts is enormous. They represent the absolute pinnacle of striking technique and create moments that transcend sports and become art. The technique requires years of practice to master the balance, timing, and spatial awareness needed to execute it under pressure. It's a testament to human athleticism and dedication. Wheel kick is the ultimate expression of martial arts beauty and brutality, combined into one perfect technique that can end fights in the most spectacular way possible. The uppercut. The uppercut is the punch that comes from hell, traveling upward from below your opponent's vision to deliver devastating force directly to the chin. When fighters like Junior Dos Santos and Shane Carwin threw uppercuts, they were basically launching missiles at their opponent's consciousness. The technique generates power through leg drive and hip rotation, with the punch traveling at a vertical arc that can slip under any guard. When it connects clean, it's like watching someone get hit by an invisible sledgehammer. Junior Dos Santos used the uppercut to devastating effect throughout his career, showing that his technique could work against the biggest and strongest heavyweights in the world. His timing and power generation were absolutely incredible. Shane Carwin's uppercuts were particularly terrifying because of his massive frame and incredible power. When he caught opponents with this technique, it was like watching a construction worker swing a sledgehammer. The uppercut works because it targets the chin from an angle that's almost impossible to see coming. When someone's focused on defending against straight punches and hooks, the uppercut comes from their blind spot. What makes this technique so devastating is that it can be thrown from close range where other punches lose their effectiveness. In the clinch or during exchanges, the uppercut becomes the perfect weapon. Fighters like Mark Hunt and Roy Nelson have also scored spectacular knockouts with uppercuts, proving that this technique works across all body types and fighting styles. The setup for a successful uppercut often involves getting opponents to lower their guard or lean forward, creating the perfect angle for the upward strike to connect. The psychological impact of uppercut knockouts is significant because they often come from positions where opponents feel relatively safe, proving that danger can come from anywhere. The uppercut represents the perfect combination of technique and power, requiring precise timing and body mechanics to generate the devastating force needed to end fights. The hook. The hook is the punch that comes from the side like a wrecking ball, and when fighters like Chuck Liddell and Dan Henderson threw hooks, they were basically swinging hammers at their opponents' heads. The circular punch travels horizontally to target the side of the head, particularly the temple and jaw areas where knockouts happen most frequently. When it connects clean, it's lights out instantly. Chuck Liddell's left hook was a thing of beauty and terror. His knockout of Renato Sobral showed the devastating power that could be generated through perfect technique and timing. Dan Henderson's hooks were particularly feared because he could throw them from awkward angles and still generate knockout power. His ability to find openings and exploit them was absolutely incredible. The hook generates power through hip rotation and shoulder turn, with the punch traveling in a wide arc that builds momentum. When it connects, the rotational force can literally shut off someone's brain. What makes the hook so effective is that it targets the side of the head where the brain is most susceptible to rotational damage. This is why hook knockouts often result in immediate unconsciousness. Fighters like Roy Nelson and Mark Hunt have also scored spectacular knockouts with hooks, each bringing their own power and timing to this devastating technique. The hook can be thrown to different levels, to the head for knockouts, to the body for liver shots, or in combinations that attack multiple targets simultaneously. The psychological impact of hook knockouts is enormous because they demonstrate the ability to generate devastating power from close range where opponents expect to be relatively safe. The hook represents the perfect marriage of technique and violence, requiring precise body mechanics to generate the rotational force needed to end fights instantly. The spinning back fist. The spinning back fist is one of the most unique knockout techniques in MMA. When fighters like Jon Jones and Carlos Condit used it, they showed that creativity and technique could combine to create devastating results. This technique uses rotational momentum to deliver a strike with the back of the fist, catching opponents from angles they never expect. It's like being hit by a surprise attack that comes out of nowhere. Jon Jones used the spinning back fist effectively throughout his career, showing that this technique could work against the best light heavyweights in the world. His timing and precision were absolutely incredible. Carlos Condit also scored knockouts with spinning techniques, proving that these unorthodox strikes could be just effective as traditional punches and kicks when executed properly. The spinning back fist generates power through centrifugal force, with the spinning motion creating momentum that's transferred through the arm to the striking surface. What makes this technique so effective is its unpredictability. Opponents are conditioned to defend against traditional strikes, making them vulnerable to these creative attacks. The technique comes from an angle that most fighters don't expect, often catching them while they're focused on more conventional striking attacks. Fighters like Diego Sanchez and Leonard Garcia have also used spinning techniques effectively, each bringing their own style and timing to these creative strikes. The psychological impact of spinning back fist knockouts is significant because they demonstrate a level of creativity and skill that can intimidate opponents. The spinning back fist represents the evolution of MMA striking, showing that fighters are constantly finding new ways to hurt each other and end fights. The knee strike. The knee strike is the most devastating close-range weapon in MMA. When fighters like Anderson Silva and Jose Aldo threw knees, they turned their legs into battering rams capable of ending fights instantly. The technique uses the hardest part of the leg to deliver crushing force to various targets, generating power through hip drive and leg extension. When it connects clean, it's like being hit by a sledgehammer. Anderson Silva's knee strikes were works of art, particularly his finish of Chael Sonnen at UFC 148. The technique was so perfectly timed and executed that it turned certain defeat into spectacular victory. Jose Aldo's knee strikes were equally devastating, showing that this technique could work against the best featherweights in the world. His timing and power generation were absolutely incredible. The knee strike is particularly effective in the clinch where punches lose their effectiveness, giving fighters a weapon that works when nothing else will. What makes this technique so dangerous is that the knee is one of the hardest parts of the human body, capable of generating tremendous force over short distances. Fighters like Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stephens have also scored spectacular knockouts with knee strikes, proving this technique works across all weight classes. The knee can target multiple areas effectively: the head for knockouts, the body for organ damage, or the legs to disrupt the opponent's base. The psychological impact of knee strike knockouts is enormous as they demonstrate the ability to end fights from positions where opponents feel relatively safe. The knee strike represents the perfect combination of power and versatility, giving fighters a weapon that can be used in almost any situation. The elbow strike. The elbow strike is the most brutal close-range technique in MMA. When fighters like Jon Jones and Anderson Silva threw elbows, they turned their arms into medieval weapons capable of cutting and knocking out opponents simultaneously. This technique uses the hardest part of the arm to deliver devastating force that can cause both immediate knockouts and fight-stopping cuts. It's like being hit with a sharp rock traveling at high speed. Jon Jones's elbow strikes were particularly devastating, showing that this technique could work against the biggest and strongest light heavyweights in the world. His precision and power were absolutely terrifying. Anderson Silva also used elbow strikes effectively, proving that this technique could be just as devastating as his more famous kicks and punches. The elbow generates power through short, explosive movements that concentrate maximum force into the smallest possible striking surface, creating devastating impact. What makes the elbow so effective is they can be thrown from almost any position: standing, clinching, or on the ground, making it the most versatile knockout technique. Fighters like Carlos Condit and Diego Sanchez have also scored knockouts with elbow strikes, each bringing their own violence and technique to this devastating weapon. The elbow can be thrown in multiple directions and angles, making it adaptable to any fighting situation or opponent position. The psychological impact of elbow strike knockouts is significant because they often result in both unconsciousness and severe cuts, creating some of the most brutal finishes in MMA. The elbow strike represents the ultimate expression of close-range violence, turning the human body into a weapon capable of ending fights in the most devastating way possible. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be posting a lot more content like this. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thank you for watching.